Listen.
Hey everybody, this is going to be my Season 7 video just ranking all of the episodes. I feel like everybody's probably going to disagree on most of the order, but I think we can all agree that it was probably episode 6 that was the weakest all season long. But I'm totally expecting everybody else to argue what the best was, where everything fell in the middle. In general, there were a lot of great storylines mixed with a lot of weak storylines, so some of my picks shuffled up and down the list a little bit. And I wouldn't be surprised if I changed my mind a little bit on the placement of some of these. Like for instance, the finale had a lot of great mythology payoffs, but I felt like it was shackled by that Winterfell storyline that just pulled it down, otherwise it would have been higher on my list. But if you're new to the channel, I'll be doing bonus videos till next season comes, obviously. That might be a long time. So I'll try to explain what the video schedule is going to be at the end of this, as well as giveaways stuff. But obviously, starting with number 7 pick, Episode 6, Beyond the Wall. Obviously, we knew that this was a terrible plan in a series of terrible Tyrion plans, so they already had a bad reason for going north of the wall. We're going to get proof for Cersei, even though we know she's probably not going to believe this, and there's probably better ways to show her that there's a threat in the north. But if you could get past all that, they had that crazy action scene at the end, they put it in the trailer, and then we got Daenerys fighting the army of the dead. It was just this great sight, a preview of what it's probably going to look like during Season 8 when she and Jon Snow are tag teaming the Night King. But that's what this episode comes down to. The whole reason that it exists is for the Night King to get a dragon. So you may have forgotten about it. They talked about it a couple seasons ago. But when George R. R. Martin was starting to pull back on the amount of time he was spending with the series, he actually wrote episodes for a couple seasons. He had to stop doing that so that he could finish Winds of Winter, which is still a work in progress. But because they knew that the series would end way before the books ever ended, Dan and Dave met with him. He explained the ending of Game of Thrones to them. So they got a roadmap of things that they needed to do. They needed to do the Tower of Joy reveal. The Night King needed to get a dragon. When we got to the finale, they even said, we've been building to this moment for so many seasons, meaning that George R. R. Martin probably told them Night King brings the wall down using one of the dragons. So they had all these big character twists like Jon Snow, Daenerys coming together. They knew they had to do. But all the stuff in between, they didn't. So that's where they started to make up things. So I think I've said it in the past where I think Dan and Dave are great at adapting Game of Thrones. That's why all the characters the first couple of seasons are so strong, because right up until about Season 4, they're straight up adapting the books. But you get to Season 5, Season 6, they start to go off book. They have to start making things up for the characters and coming up with storylines that bear no resemblance to what George R. R. Martin is doing. And that's where you get to your dumber version of Littlefinger. That's where you get to your dumber version of Tyrion, characters that are normally supposed to be the smartest people on the chessboard. So episode 6 is a casualty of them knowing the signpost they had to hit, but having absolutely no idea how to get there. Well, we'll do a Dirty Dozen episode north of the wall. How do we get them up there? Magnificent 7. And then there were just a lot of the character moments that I feel like could have been a lot better. They spent most of those early walk-in talks recapping what had happened for each of the characters. Like Gendry, all of his dialogue was meant to tell you, hey, remember when Gendry got taken by Melisandre? The Hound and Tormund was probably the best thing to come out of that. When he starts talking about Brienne of Tarth. Brienne of freaking Tarth, you just had to mention her. So there was a lot of good stuff in there, but I feel like, most people watched the episode and they sort of brushed over all that because they knew this big Night King twist was coming, him turning Viserion. That was what the episode was predicated on, the fact that you would care about the dragon dying. So next on the list is the finale, and not because it's a bad episode, but just because I feel like it was pulled down, like I said, by the Winterfell plotline, which, even though it made sense, they cut so many scenes out because they're addicted to surprises. Game of Thrones is addicted to that twist where Sansa turns and accuses Littlefinger and you get that surprise. That was what all those scenes all season long were about. Like, you knew that Arya and Sansa wouldn't be at each other's throats. There's no way that Arya is so much of a psychopath that she would kill her sister and wear her face around, as she implied during episode 6. Yet the actor that played Bran said that Sansa came to him in a deleted scene from the finale where she asked him about the truth of Littlefinger. He explained everything, and that's the moment she realized that they were being played, and that's when Arya and Sansa stopped being at each other's throats. So there was this big thing all season long where people thought they're both playing him this whole time. No, it was not an act. They genuinely hated each other all season long. So I feel like that was largely contrived, and it's just a function of this big twist at the end. So like I said, addicted to surprise. So that's why the finale gets knocked down a couple notches, because there was a lot of good stuff in the episode too. I feel like the mythology payoffs, we finally got the truth of Rhaegar and Lyanna. I know there's still a lot of debate about how that's going to go down in the books. I'm expecting a few minor changes, but like I said, in that hotel room, they got all the big signposts from George R. R. Martin, so he told them about the Tower of Joy and what was going on with Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar. So, undead dragon bringing down the wall, great payoff. We knew it was all coming at some point, and like I said, it was one of the signposts that George R. R. Martin told them about that they needed to hit. So it was a really strong ending. And generally, like, the rest of the episodes on my list are pretty close together. Like, there was no one episode that was so much better than the others, with a few exceptions. Maybe my number one pick, I felt like it was a lot stronger than the other episodes. But still working our way down. Number 5, episode 2, Stormborn. In one of the reasons why I love this episode so much, but it's a little bit lower on my list, is because it tied up the Sand Snake plot in the most satisfying way I felt like they could have done it. Because there's still so many hanging threads. What's going on with the forces in Dorne? They had an army. They weren't all on those boats. They were going to pick them up when they were taken out by Euron. So the funny thing here, and the fandom's kind of picked up on this, is that the show just wants you to forget about Dorne. They're like, okay, we didn't really do this the best way we could have, so we're just going to push it off to the side and hope that nobody ever mentions it again. So it's a bit of a joke now, but I feel like that big battle at the end of the episode was probably one of the best executions they had all season long. Executed as in how they did it, and execution as Euron literally executed all those people. Most of it I was fine with. I think some people were just worried that they were spending so much time on minor characters when they could be spending it on the major characters. And I will explain a little bit about the whole 7 episodes, 6 episodes. There's a lot of confusion about why there aren't more episodes. But once you understand, you'll see that they're not wasting time in the way that you think that they're wasting time. But my next pick was number 4, the premiere episode. I feel like it was a fairly strong premiere episode. But again, that Winterfell plot and all that manufactured drama with Jon Snow and Sansa, I feel like they want to keep that Sansa storyline as relevant as possible because the Stark children are big characters, and that's how the series started. They build it as Starks versus Lannisters, so however interesting you find the other ancillary Stark children, the show feels obligated to include them in a big way. So they had to create a storyline for Winterfell this season that I am almost absolutely certain you won't see in the books. Like, everybody will get up to Winterfell eventually. That's where Jon Snow and Daenerys are headed now. So that's probably what will happen in the books. But the way that everybody gets there will be very different. But I just absolutely loved everything they did at Dragonstone this season. It was probably my favorite set. My number 3 pick was episode 5, Eastwatch. So a lot of fan service in this episode. Gendry came back. They're like, hey, remember Gendry is a thing, and he has a hammer that looks just like Robert's. But there were so many great mythology payoffs. One of the best moments all season long was Jon Snow meeting the dragons. Like I said, another big signpost that George R. R. Martin told them they had to hit, and what it means once he comes together with Daenerys. And the biggest part of that is that he is blood of the dragon, so the dragons recognize his blood. And it just wound up being this amazing moment with an amazing sound score. If you had 5 seconds to explain to someone what this season was all about, you could just show them this picture right here. Or you could show them a picture of the Night King riding Viserion. But this was also one of those episodes where they started to course correct on bad Tyrion moments, and you got some good Tyrion moments because he had that scene with Jaime. His scenes with his family were the best scenes that he had all season long, and there were only a couple, which is why when we got to that Cersei moment in the finale, everyone was like, oh my god, this is so great. What happened to Tyrion? He's a great character. Where's he been all season? The number 2 pick was episode 3, Queen's Justice. Tell Cersei it was me. I feel like the Queen of Thorns went out like such a boss that any other problems you had with the episode, you just remember that. That's the thing people walk away with. But I do think that people unfairly dinged the episode because of the way they teased a big battle and then they just cut right to the end of it. Like, nope, this isn't going to be the big battle episode. We're saving that for next week's episode, Field of Fire, and we're saving that for episode 6. So if anything, it was a great character episode, and I feel like people were just down on it because the action wasn't what they expected. So as you probably guess, my favorite episode of the season, at least right now, is still episode 4, which I'm still going to call Field of Fire. I'm a little upset that the producers called it the Loot Train Battle. That's like the lamest name that you could give to it, but I feel like it was a great payoff. You finally got the big battle. You got to see the Dothraki just unload on Lannisters, and you got a lot of great character moments with Bronn and Jaime. So it's just proof that episode quality isn't necessarily the same as episode length. So people tend to think that longer episodes are better because they include more stuff. That's not always the case, as the finale proves, because they had to spend all that time on the Winterfell plot. Imagine how much stronger the episode would have been if you didn't even have to deal with that. But because Season 8 is only 6 episodes long, and they're all converging on Winterfell, the Army of the Dead is headed in that direction, Daenerys is headed in that direction with her dragons and her army. They're making it seem like almost every single episode of Season 8 will be like Episode 4, regardless of how long they are. There's a lot of theories about them being feature-length episodes, but all in all, I feel like it was a strong season, maybe not quite as strong as Season 6, and it was really hampered by the fact that they were trying to skip over as much story as possible. So let me know in the comments what you think the worst episode of the season was and what the best episode was. But just to clarify on episode count, so what we found out in the last couple of months is that Game of Thrones is ending with a specific episode count, the 6 episodes in Season 8, the 7 in this season, because Dan and Dave are pretty much done with the series. Like, they're like, okay, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to move on to our next show, which people are already really upset about, that Confederate TV show. And HBO, on the other side of things, is like, please make more Game of Thrones. Make 10 more seasons of Game of Thrones. We'll pay every dollar you need to make it happen. But the producers are like, nope, we're done with it. We're going to wrap this up with a couple more episodes, and that's the end of it. We don't want to deal with Game of Thrones anymore. So I feel like most of the logic problems this season and the character moments that didn't quite work are just due to that, them trying to speed this along through the last bit of the story. But just a reminder, if you're worried about the quality of Season 8, George R. Martin already told them what the ending of the story was, and we know that they're great at adapting George R. Martin's material. So Season 8 is mostly George R. Martin's season of Game of Thrones. It's the finale that he envisioned for Dream of Spring. So whatever your thoughts on Season 7 were, whether you loved it, whether you hated it, I feel like Season 8 will actually be much stronger despite being fewer episodes. But what'll happen is I have a Tyrion video that I'm going to do tomorrow, then I'll do another Q&A video for Season 8 stuff on Tuesday, and then after that what'll probably happen is there'll be Game of Thrones every Sunday and then a couple times during the week for the rest of the year, and then just depending on what everyone wants to talk about, we can adjust the schedule starting in early next year. But for the most part, there'll be at least a couple Game of Thrones videos per week. There's a new round of that HBO Now giveaway. All you have to do to enter is just be a subscriber, leave a comment on this video. I'll announce the winner when I post my Tyrion video tomorrow. You can click here for my Season 8 predictions, and you can click here to learn all about Aegon Targaryen and the different Aegons of the TV show and the books. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.